In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another exciting edition of Inside the MFL, your official sports talk radio show of the Minor Football League, headquartered right here in our beautiful nation's capital, under the wonderful leadership of Miss Mayor Muriel Bowser. And of course, we are led by the boss man, Mr. Richard Myles Sr., the host for the show. Myles, how are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Good to hear.
Excited about Africa. It's all about Africa.
I hear the bass and the excitement in your voice.
Absolutely.
2020 is just around the corner, so I can see why. I am Kelsey Nicole Nelson, joined by our special guest and co-host and friend of the family, just a man of many titles, Mr. Robert Gatewood, host of the Marketing Pulpit on WOL 1450 AM. How are you, Robert, today?
Glad to be here, Kelsey.
Good.
The money guru.
The money guru, yes.
Hey,
Make us rich.
I've been called worse. That's what you say.
Yeah, we want to get everybody.
Basically, you want a friend like Robert. That's what you say. That's what you say.
Just glad to be here, really.
Yeah, I'm glad to have the crew back together. Africa is right around the corner.
Goodness.
So, Myles, let's just kick off with Africa. The Minor Football League is preparing to put 16 franchises over in Africa. I know we've had a lot of questions on social media about it. So just give a breakdown of first, why the MFL decided to move to Africa, and two, where will these teams be?
Well, I'm excited about it because it's the first time that people of color get an opportunity to own a professional franchise. And having Robert here, he would expand on that a little more because we never had generational wealth.
Right.
Everybody always beat up on people of color because we never had any money left. We barely had enough to eat with now. Right. And as you know, sports is the center, be it football, rapping, singing, whatever, entertainment is big, And I also want to get that myth away from the mistrust between African Americans and Africa. We want to get rid of that. So when we talk to the ambassador, U.S. ambassador for the African Union, and she asked about the MFL. She tried to get black businesses to come back to the motherland and stuff. The MFL was the first to answer the call, and we was excited about that. So, the significance of this is that we want to putting the half of the league over there speaks volume for the league because you have a lot of African over there playing in the National Football League. And I know soccer is a big time thing over there, but American football is global now. Everybody watches it, and I think, I always say timing is everything, as you know, Robert, and this is the best time. I know the NBA is trying to creep over there, but one thing we have, they might have a lot of black players, but the MFL is black, period.
So black-owned.
It's a black-owned operation, and that's the great thing about it. So in talking to a lot of the different ambassadors from different countries over in Africa, and you look at a continent as big as it is, it's a shame it broke up into 50 countries, But then again, I like them. They very... now they begin to realize their strength in numbers, and I think what she did was great in trying to get all the countries over there to unite, and we're talking to all the different countries. Unfortunately, it's just 16, but we've been talking to some people over there that's really excited about the MFL coming there. Everybody talking about it here amongst Africans. That's the great thing about it. And we just excited about that. And we have someone you'll bring up in a minute on the show. I was on this show. Why don't you introduce him, Kelsey?
I will. I just want to give some preface to this conversation because, again, I think it's the next frontier. Africa's the next frontier for football. There was a great article in The Undefeated about 2 years ago, and I'm going to bring up a quote from it. Former NFL lineman Brian Ballinger, who had visited several African countries, had said the influx of native-born and first-generation African players in the NFL is a natural progression of globalization in general and the growing popularity of American football. So obviously he's saying American football is growing over there, and it's just globalization at its best. And then he gave this quote: "I think we're going to see more of it." He said there's Malik Watson, who's from London. A lot of these guys that are coming into the league are just too big for soccer, but they still have the skills. I think it's a real trend, and it's going to continue. You see it in basketball, in football, and you'll see it in the colleges more and more. All right, so that's just to preface this conversation. But with that, I will introduce our special guest, who we're very excited to have. Myles, I understand you were recently on his show.
Oh yes, and I think I surprised a lot of his audience and everything. Not him, but he know how fiery I am.
All right. And so he has the Africa Sports Report podcast. And with further ado, I would like to welcome on Mr. Leslie Koroma Sr. Leslie, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you. Welcome to the show, first of all. And we're excited to talk about football with you, of course, because Myles has already been on your show to talk about it. But just from you, I want to hear, how big is it for a league like the Minor Football League to commit to saying they are going to place 16 franchises in the continent of Africa next year?
It is huge. I mean, you look at the economic potential, you look at a lot of other types of potentials that are there with that. First of all, like you mentioned earlier, soccer is big, yeah.
Right.
We know that. But that's about the only sport that really is so, popular and that everybody seems to play. But there's no diversification in sports itself. So we want to diversify. So this is a great opportunity to diversify, the sporting disciplines. I mean, most times when you turn on the TV, you either see an African kicking a ball or running. Those are the two sports that are the mainstays out there. So now with the MFL coming to Africa, now Africans have an opportunity to play this game that they've been seeing on TV for a long time, and now it's going to be on on their own soil, on their own fields of play, and they'll have a chance to go out there just like the other, the brothers who come out overseas and get a chance to end up playing in the NFL. Now they're going to have a chance themselves to play and to play back home, for that matter. So this is huge, and economically, like I say, it's huge and it's a win-win because sports is a great economic engine for society. Mm-hmm. Sports is one of the things that keeps the things like the hospitality industry alive, hotels, restaurants, bars, and things like that. So now you bring an additional 16 franchise league to the continent, and you grow that, you develop that. I mean, the sky is the limit as far as that's concerned.
The sky is the limit. And he talked about the economic impact of sports, which is where I'll bring our marketing guru on, Mr. Robert Gatewood. So, Robert, just talk about what sports can do for an economy like that in Africa.
And hello to Mr. Koroma. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's great what you're doing. I've looked at your show and heard you. Man, you got it going on. You know what I was thinking? They have this mistrust between the continents. And I think that having this league coming to Africa from the United States, do you think that would do something? What do you think that would do for that mistrust that seems to be happening between our continents?
It do a whole lot. I mean, because the sports is also that field of play where people develop mutual respect for each other, get to understand each other. So it kind of creates that opportunity for people to start to get to understand each other, see where each other is coming from culturally. That mistrust is not even intentional. It's just I think it's something that it's by mistake, if I would say, if I could use that as a way to describe that. It's something that's been developed over time because I guess you can say the distance within the two continents, and of course cultural norms that have been developed over time, and so. But if you have that, like I say, it's not intentional because you can tell there's a need for the connection, but the means is not there. So sports is going to be that great bridge.
You know what?
It's going to be that great bridge to start bringing that common understanding together, making people understand each other, knowing where this person is coming from, knowing where the other person is coming from. So we can start to respect each other, start to know and feel what each other's pains are, each other's needs, and each other's concerns. So and that's where some a lot of things go wrong. So but like I say, sports is that great bridge. Sports has been used over time for developing friendship between communities, and this is great for the African continent and its children in the African diaspora, in America and beyond.
But what you were saying is exactly right. And I was also thinking that generational wealth is also a great bridge. As we start to build generational wealth here in the United States and abroad in Africa, I think that's also going to be a big part in bridging that divide and creating that trust between the two continents. Also, having ownership. Ownership is a universal language, and it's really a language that's understood by the powerful and the wealthy. as we start to get more African Americans here in the United States and in Africa start speaking that universal language of wealth, we're going to start seeing some of these barriers fall down, some of these challenges between our communities. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunities that bringing the MFL to Africa and people like yourself who are actually pushing the agenda, contributing, and it's something really to be celebrated.
Absolutely. You mentioned generational wealth, and that's key. That's massive right there because poverty is a disease.
Yes.
Let's just put it that way. It's a disease, and poverty can cause people to have unnecessary, emotional reactions to a lot of different things. Because someone who's been hungry for hours or days, it's not thinking right. It doesn't behave right. If I can put it that way. And I'm not trying to, say it's something that's overly prevalent. But again, like you say, because we don't have generational wealth, we don't have the power to self-determine. We don't have anything. Now we have a lot of issues in Africa with the Chinese and a lot of other Russians and everybody else trying to encroach and come back into Africa. And I feel like this is a moment for not just Africans on the continent, but our people of the African diaspora to come back home and say, you know what, this is ours now.
It's not happening. Absolutely.
But you know what? Wealth needs a vehicle. Mm-hmm. And regardless of the uses, sometimes there's natural resources, sometimes there's other types of assets. But the MFL is such a vehicle that can bring wealth into Africa and cross those the oceans between the two continents. So I see the MFL and what's going on with the African Union and places that are actually pushing this powerful agenda. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think it's going to bridge some gaps. It's going to create some wealth, and it is a very powerful and potent vehicle that can shepherd in a new wave of wealth into the continent of Africa. Mm-hmm.
And I think Robert brings in a lot of great points. We're going to keep this conversation going, but we have 2 minutes left real quick. And so we're going to keep talking about this. But I think what it goes back to, and it's funny, I did my senior thesis on this, is how sports kind of equalizes the playing field. Not fully, yes, but there's a reason why when you go and speak to young African-American kids, young African kids, young whoever, they're usually going to say they want to be a sports athlete or an entertainer. One, because that's what they see, but then two, because those are the only people from their community that they have seen gain wealth, right? They've seen that firsthand. Yes. It's relatable. And then hopefully that wealth is spread down. And then I think just even with this conversation, I think in terms of African football players, Christian Okoye, who is known to be the first native-born football player that we all got to see on a national scale, and of course, he was able to do something for the Chiefs. He had just played 3 seasons.
And he had
just played 3 seasons of football before he got drafted to go to the NFL, and then the rest is history, right? Arrowhead, they do the chomp. They love Christian Okoye, and he's a legend now. And now there's so many. I mean, you cut the football game on Sunday, cut it on Monday night, cut it on Thursday night. I bet you are going to hear a name of African descent, because now that's what it's done. But now you're bringing that to Africa, right? It's not only going to be here, you're spreading it, and all sports are going global. Africa is, I think, is a place that is the next frontier. Qatar is also doing a lot with sports and globalization. If you've been following track, they have the World Championships there, and Qatar is trying to put all their money into sports backing, because they see the value of sports and they see how it puts you on a national scale. So I think we have a lot of great conversations going on in terms of generational wealth, the opportunities it provides for everyone, and the ownership opportunities to see people like everyone in this room and on the phone what sports can do for us. So we're going to be right back with our special guest, Leslie Koroma. But stay right here again. We're going to continue this conversation. We have lots more. You're listening to Inside the MFL right here on DC Radio.
DC Radio, where you can hear district creatives with Sevi Charisse.
One of the conversations that we have on the show is how to monetize your creative gifts and abilities.
Hearing the Council with Josh Gibson.
You'll learn about policy, learn about people, learn about history, and learn about the institution.
Wit and Reason with Dr. Alexis Moreno.
It seems like there's still a lot of confusion and misunderstanding surrounding the concept of love, so let's break it down.
Raiding the Crates with John Avery.
You're raiding the crates on DC Radio, and we're just getting started, so let's kick this party into high gear.
And Rememories for Seniors with Elliot Michael Gold.
The people we love and admire and who set the beat and the music of our lives.
DC Radio, 96.3 and DCRadio.gov. In DC, for DC.
Welcome back to Inside the MFL right here on DC Radio. I'm Kelsey Nicole Nelson, joined as always by Richard Myles Sr. and Mr. Robert Gatewood. And also on the phone, we have a very special guest, Mr. Leslie Koroma Sr. And so we will continue the conversation that we had going on, but we want to really focus on the value of ownership. And I think it's a conversation that everyone in the sports world is talking about, especially I know in the NBA world. China is getting more and more involved in ownership.
Right.
But I think it's important to talk about the MFL ownership again, because it talks about a disenfranchised community that we're giving value and opportunity to, and that's where the MFL is unique, and especially going back home, going back to the motherland of Africa. So this is where I'll bring you in, Robert. So let's talk about just the value of a franchise. What can that do for any person that wants to get involved?
That's a great question, and I harken back to the great Dr. Heinrich Clark. He spoke about Africa in several of his journals and his books, and he said most people that come to Africa do not come to do good. And that's been historically the case with Africa. The MFL has a different agenda.
Right.
We have a vested interest. It's our roots. It's where we're from. And so we come to Africa. We come with. We're not coming to take anything away. We come to bring things to Africa, and it'll be a mutual win-win arrangement. But the ownership of owning a franchise, there are so many things. One, it allows you to work on things that matter to you. Unlike a job, it's job security. It's about creating the atmosphere and the kind of world you want to live in.
Right.
And so when you've been under the thumb and you've been under colonizers for so many years, to actually have an opportunity now to take control of your own destiny, it is powerful. And I'm happy that the MFL is actually presenting an opportunity. And I'm sure that the brothers and sisters in Africa will be with open arms, and will be ready and willing and happy to come in and assist and to build that bond, rebuild that bond, reconnect, help each other, have that reciprocity between the United States and Africa. So I'm really looking forward to that, but I think there's so much to be gained by owning a franchise, whether it's here in the United States or in Africa. The opportunities are limitless, really.
And in saying that, before I bring our esteemed colleague, from Africa, we're talking about economic development. I mean, that's something that everybody needs. Economic development, and the great thing about it, these are franchises owned by Africa. We're not taking anything. These are people of color owning the franchises. Now, I'm excited about the first World Bowl, because now you're talking about a real World Bowl.
That's right.
Because the champion over there will play the champion over here.
Right.
And the game's going to be played there some years, and some years will be played here in America. What more can you ask for when you're talking about economic development? How do you feel about that, sir?
That's massive. Like I say, it's for me personally, this comes at the right time with the recently ratified Africa Free Trade Area Agreement, which just came into effect this past August.
Right.
July. Where almost all 55 countries signed on to it.
Right. We was happy to hear about
that. One trading block, and there's going to be a free movement, and then we're going to encourage intra-African trade, which never used to be the norm, because most African countries were built as colonies for European countries, and most of their trading system were built to take goods and services out of Africa and straight into Europe. Yes. So now we have a league which is going to have 16 franchises, where those franchises will be traveling within Africa from country to country, and is going to improve on air traffic, is going to improve on hotels stays, going to improve on restaurant usage. A lot of these great economic engines that are good for developing local economies. Then, of course, the need for ownership. The need for ownership is massive, because that's where, like you say, wealth is. You can contain wealth. When you have control, of it yourself. It's not in the hands of a foreign entity. Now you as an African have the opportunity to build on that. So, like you said, it's massive in the sense that individuals are going to have the opportunity to employ thousands of people themselves. Keep food on the table put food on the table for thousands of families out there. So it's I can't say enough. Because the impact is massive, and we just can't wait to have such an opportunity on the continent. Like you said, with the NBA already making encroachment in there, and now the MFL coming in. It couldn't be a better time for Africa.
as you said, it could not be a better time for Africa. Again, Africa is the next frontier. The MFL is underway making preparations, and I want to make sure fans know that if you want more information, we will be planning a press conference soon that will be coming up. It will be held at the National Press Club. Be sure to check out our website, www.mflishere.com, for more information, because we want to make sure we keep people apart and along with this journey. I think that's also what makes the Minor Football League different, is that they're transparent in all the different things that are going on. And we really want people to experience the MFL, whether that be here in America or over in Africa. And I think something along the lines of the conversation that we have going on also is just the representation factor. Again, I think the ownership thing is huge, not just because we're giving people a chance to own a franchise, but because then the next generation of children will get to see people that look like them in ownership positions. And it's so much easier for a child to believe that they can be something that they can see, right? And I think that's why it's huge, because most kids can name a black athlete, an African athlete. Ask them to name an African owner, a black owner, and I bet you're getting a long pause of silence, all right? And it's unfortunate, but it's just the simple matter of the fact. And again, when we have kids coming from these backgrounds, it's just hard for them to even think they can be such, and it's sad. But again, the Minor Football League is unique in the fact that they're making it affordable and accessible to everyone. Again, it levels the playing field, and that's something that we're not born into, unfortunately. We know we're climbing up to try to get to that field, while it's constantly moving up for others.
And also, we're very excited about the opportunity for kids, I should say young people, in college, if they want to be a sports agent, okay, the MFL is here for them. Marketing, PR, public relations, those are the type of things that over in Africa, these kids are there. Now they will learn how to do this stuff, because now it's presented to them. They don't have to worry about coming to America to get these skills or learn how to be, because you will have professional teams there. What do you say to that, Robert?
I think that's exactly right. Sometimes I see some of the images that come out of the continent of Africa, and it's really kind of disheartening to think that this is the continent that has more resources than any other continent in the world. And to think that many of those resources have been abused, really stolen. And the fact that we are here in the United States and we're able to bring some of our skills and talents and really bring another resource into the continent, so that some of the people that have been, left behind, or that didn't have an opportunity to take advantage of some of their own resources that were already there that had been taken away. So this is one way that we have the opportunity to bring something back to the continent and take some of the resources and talents that are there and channel those resources into income streams through franchise, through ownership, through rebuilding communities, through education projects. This is an opportunity that's really unparalleled in recent history.
And I just love this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let me say some real quick on that, because you mentioned colleges, and I don't want to take away from the conversation about the MFL, but Mr. Myles himself knows I'm part of a project that we just signed an agreement last Friday with the Federation of African University Sports, with a group called the African Sports Ventures Group, where we're going to launch Africa's version of the NCAA next year. And the MFL is going to be a component of that particular, where the MFL is going to have its own developmental, a program in the colleges themselves. We're going to have those 32 universities across Africa have football teams that will be sort of like a feeder system for the MFL itself. So it's a big opportunity there, and I just want to plug that in to let you all know that the African Sports Ventures Group just did sign an agreement with the Federation of African University Sport to launch Africa's version of the NCAA, which was never there before. So now we're talking about all this college students who will have an opportunity to either play, or those who don't have an opportunity, who will not have the opportunity to play, but be able to perform all the duties for the teams, when in management, whatever capacity they'll be able to perform. But the opportunity will be there for them as well. So this is huge.
That's fascinating, right? I mean, we're talking about, you said something like the NCAA is now a governing body to help regulate. I think that's huge. And for the MFL to be a part of that, that's exciting. Again, lots of great things happening in Africa, and that's why the MFL is heading over. And as we continue this conversation of Africa, I want to make sure for everyone that's talking about this on social media, make sure you hashtag MFL Africa. Give us your thoughts, your comments. If you want to be a franchise owner, talk to us. I mean, we want this to be as transparent as possible and for everyone to get involved. But just continuing on the importance of a league like the Minor Football League, putting its eyes on Africa, and not only wanting to take but give back, as Robert mentioned. It takes me back to my younger days when I used to rock FUBU, right? For us, by us. And that's what the MFL is doing, right? It's for us, it's by us, and we're not taking. We want to be there with Africa. We want to share the resources, right? We're breaking bread. We're sharing the bread. We're not just taking the bread back. And I think, unfortunately, like you said, Robert, all the time, it's like African history so for far too long as when people going in and just taking everything. Yeah. Remember, there's that line in Black Panther, right? He said, well, how do you think your ancestors got this, right? They took it and they stole it. And quite frankly, it's been the history of it. But now Africa is on the map for having a franchise, a league that wants to not only invest in Africa, but Myles, you said it, give jobs to people. Make sure we create pipelines for the future. So it's not just a one-time deal. We're not just coming to Africa
Economic
and leaving.
Development.
Right. You're planting the seeds so this can continue to grow, continue to spruce. And I think it's going to be something that's exciting and fun, and something that the future kids of Africa will grow up and say, I want to be part of the Minor Football League. I grew up going to Minor Football League games. I'm going to one day be a Minor Football League owner. It's exciting.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you also for pushing the agenda over there in Africa and getting the word out for us, because we're going to need all that. Yes. As I talk with you on your show, I appreciate being on your show. I hope I didn't go off too much, because I know you was laughing at me when I was talking. He was like, Myles is something else. But I'm really excited about it, as you know. And, this is something that the Africa need to know, that this is not something in the workings. We're there with you all. And we want to really get people to understand that. I want people to understand the MFL is here, and when people, just laugh and say the NFL, what does the initial stand for? I say, not for long. And they said, well, the NFL, I say, money for life, if you own one of them. Like that. So these are type of things we do. And I let Robert, let Robert in for a few minutes before we take it back to Kelsey.
I think the initiative of the MFL going to Africa is part of a greater initiative of indigenous people throughout the world reclaiming their destiny. And the fact that we're going into Africa and reconnecting is part of a greater movement. That's why I think the momentum, we have the wind behind our backs, and it's going to be a movement that's going to be very hard to stop. I just encourage that people who are sitting on the sidelines thinking about it, and I just don't think too long, because these opportunities come along only once in a lifetime. So if anybody's sitting on the fence thinking about whether or not they should become a part of the MFL, think long, you think wrong. This is going to be big, folks.
And before we turn it back to Ms. Nelson, I tell people the MFL and the NFL is similar in most ways. Why are we different? That the fact that the NFL, as strong as they are, they know their place. The MFL, we're like the wind. We'll never know ours. We're on our way to Africa. Ms. Nelson?
Yes, on our way to Africa. Come along for the ride and the journey. We are going back in there to stay. It's an exciting time. Again, I want to make sure you guys follow along with all of the exciting updates. To all of our fans out there, our website, www.mflishere.com. We're also on Facebook at MFL. We're also on Twitter at MFL Experience. On Instagram at Experience the MFL. Feel free to call us at 240-551-8031. And of course, send us your questions. Email us. If you want to get involved, send us your resume at experiencethemfl@gmail.com. Signing out, I'm Kelsey Nicole Nelson, joined by Richard Myles Sr., Robert Gatewood, and Leslie Kimora Sr. on our guest. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next week, always remember to keep inside the MFL.
In DC, for DC, DC Radio, 96.3 HD4, and DCRadio.gov.